Good evening and welcome to day 3 of the second annual I Heart Pluto Festival, where we're celebrating the scientific and cultural heritage of Pluto. My name is Kevin Schindler. I'm the historian here at Lowell Observatory, and I'm pleased to be joining you every night this week. Tonight, I'm operating out of Clyde Tombaugh's apartment. This is where he was living when he discovered Pluto. Today, it still serves as a place for visiting scientists and others to stay. And tonight, we'll get to tonight's topic in just a couple of minutes, but we're going to talk about inspiration and awe and wonder of exploration. And for me, I get goosebumps just sitting in here thinking, this is where he was the night he discovered Pluto at 24 years old. What was going through his mind as he made this discovery? I'm sitting right where he was, contemplating all this. So it's pretty neat to be able to do that. Our I Heart Pluto Festival, we have events going every night through the 18th, which is the actual anniversary of Discovery Day. And besides that, we have some ongoing events that are going. Our friends down at Karma Sushi, which back in Clyde Tombaugh's day was called the Black Cat Cafe, and that's where he ate dinner the night he discovered Pluto. They've created a Pluto roll, and they brought it back again this year for the I Heart Pluto Festival. And we also have our friends in the local radio group doing events out in our parking lot as we speak right now. And we also have an art exhibit that you can view from the I Heart Pluto page, and that's with the International Association of Astronomical Artists, which I believe both the speakers tonight are part of. We might talk about that a little bit. And we also have our Lowell gift shop online. We have a lot of great Pluto-themed things in there also. So it's been a really great week so far. We're looking forward to tonight's program a lot. We have 2 people that have explored above the Earth's surface and below sea level. So really a great honor for us to have both of them here. And like I said, we're going to talk about not necessarily the pure science, but more of the personal part, the emotion, the awe and wonder we feel when we do science. So let me introduce our panelists tonight, and then I'll turn it over. Nicole Stott is an astronomer, aquanaut, and artist who creatively combines the awe and wonder of her space flights and undersea experiences with her artwork to inspire everyone's appreciation of our role as crewmates here on Spaceship Earth. A veteran NASA astronaut with 2 space flights, she spent 104 days living and working on the International Space Station and Space Shuttle. Personal spaceflight highlights include performing a spacewalk, painting a watercolor, working with her crewmates on science. It's all about improving life on Earth, and of course, the view out of the window. And Nicole is soon releasing her first book. It's called Back to Earth, What Life in Space Taught Me About Our Home Planet. And if you get on, just do a search right now, you can get pre-order copies of that. You can order it. And as I understand, Nicole, you can correct me, but I think if you pre-order, you can still get a signed book plate that's inside of it. Is that right?
Yeah, I'm not sure how it'll come to you, but if you pre-order, there will be a signed book plate to come along with it, either in the book or to follow.
Okay. And speaking of books, here's one that I highly recommend you pick up, Orbital Perspective. That's written by our second presenter, Ron Garan. Ron is a decorated NASA astronaut, fighter pilot and test pilot, artist, and humanitarian. Ron has spent 178 days in space and has traveled more than 71 million miles during 2,800 orbits of our planet. He flew on both the U.S. Space Shuttle and the Russian Soyuz spacecraft, where he accomplished 4 spacewalks. Ron also served as an aquanaut on the same Nemo mission as Nicole. Later, Ron was assigned to the U.S. Agency for International Development, leading the Unity Node project. The project's task was to develop a universal open source platform enabling humanitarian organizations to work toward mutual goals. And I mentioned Ron's book. He also has another one coming out on May 4th. So look forward to that. And then moderating our discussion tonight with Nicole and Ron is W. Lowell Putnam. Lowell Putnam, as we call him around here, among other things, is our sole trustee at Lowell Observatory. He's the great grandnephew of our founder, Percival Lowell. And the Putnam family has run the observatory for years, really an ownership this family. It's a love for the place and to do good science and to share the results of that science with the public. Lowell's been the sole trustee going back several years now. He founded in 1984 the Video Communications Incorporated, a software company specializing in business systems for TV networks. And he was awarded an honorary doctorate degree from Northern Arizona University in 2018. So with that, we've got a great panel ahead. So Lowell, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Kevin. And
let me point out one more thing I forgot. If anybody has any questions, just send them in our YouTube feed and we'll get to those, some during the program and some afterwards.
All right. Thank you, Kevin. And thank you, Nicole and Ron, for joining us this evening. It's an interesting topic and one that has significant meaning to the observatory. We would not exist if it were not for the experience of awe and wonder that a 3-year-old Percival Lowell had when his mother took him up to the rooftop of their house to see the comet Donati that was passing overhead over North America in 1858. And that was his first permanent memory that he carried with him for the rest of his life. And it inspired him in his love for astronomy, leading directly to the founding of the observatory in 1894. So what I guess I wanted to start with both you and both of you is when did you sort of have that first impactful moment of awe and wonder, and how did that affect you? So I'll start with Nicole and ask you how that went.
All right. Well, I think it's interesting because when I get asked that question now, I answer it in a way that I don't know if I would have at the time where this was happening. And that's when I think back on these kind of awe and wonder moments, I think it started from childhood and then they have occurred throughout life in one way or another. And for me, the first really memorable ones, I think, are, parents that shared with what they loved with me. My dad built and flew small airplanes that, I think about now the opportunity as a kid for just on a regular basis to be separating from the planet that way when you're that young and, seeing your neighborhood, realizing that, those kids at the rival school in Largo really aren't that, far away from Clearwater and, the tiny little cars. all these things that we grow up thinking. And when we look at it, from that new perspective, we realize this, this interconnectivity. And, Ron will talk about this too. I know it's just, you get that sense from these new ways of looking at things. And, certainly before flying in space, you guys mentioned it, Ronnie and I had the chance to, experience Earth from what we call the inner space perspective, being immersed in the planet, kind of looking at it on this micro view of things, becoming part of, the way Earth exists around us all the time that we don't necessarily, experience on a day-to-day basis. And then, certainly flying in space, having that I would say macro view now out the window, where we kind of feel like we're surrounding it. I don't know. I just think it's something that if we open our eyes and our hearts to it, we're experiencing these things all the time. And I know that I'm thankful for this experience tonight because I think that's what we're trying to do. We're sharing our own experiences and trying to encourage others to look for that awe and wonder that surrounds us. So I'll shut up now.
Thank you. Ron, what about you?
Yeah, I relate to everything that Nicole said. Some of those instances, like she said, we were together. And when Nicole was talking about exploring inner space, that was on Aquarius, the world's only undersea laboratory. And Nicole and I lived there with our other crewmates for 3 weeks on the bottom of the ocean, immersed in this beautiful coral reef and all the marine life there. And I thought that was my first experience, I think, of awe and wonder of our planet as somebody at NASA. But like Nicole, my first memory of just being immersed in On Wonder was July 20th, 1969. And to set the stage, it was my great-grandparents' 50th wedding anniversary. So my whole extended family was together at a restaurant for the celebration. And, about 4 o'clock in the afternoon on the East Coast, we all wandered down to this basement bar with a grainy black and white television set that was beaming images from a desolate rock 250,000 miles away. And I distinctly remember, even as a young kid, just kind of floating on a sea of possibility. I'm thinking anything is possible. There is nothing that's impossible. I mean, it was right before my eyes as a little kid. And that is my first, I think, real memory of being immersed in On Wonder. I just couldn't believe that what I was seeing, that humans were walking on the surface of the moon. And I remember, a very strange thought that I would not have been able to put into these words at the time, but on some level I realized that we had just become a different species. We were a species no longer confined to our planet, and a deep calling within me emerged that night, a calling to set out in the path of all the explorers that went before, to try and seek out the unknown. But in particular, what really amazed me was the possibility of being able to leave the planet and then turn around and look back and see the planet from that perspective. And I think that was something that really served as a calling. But I also will say, just like Nicole brought out, one of the things that spaceflight gives us is the appreciation for the On Wonder that we're surrounded by constantly. Every moment of every day, no matter where you are surrounded by miraculous awe and wonder constantly. And I think that's something, obviously, that you don't need to go to space to realize.
No, but it sounds like it helps.
It doesn't hurt.
So
we highly recommend it, by the way. However, the opportunity that you guys provide too for, feet firmly planted on a planet, which I don't think we think about very often, this fact that we're all on this planet, right? And this ability to look up and out and appreciate kind of who and where we are that way. That's pretty awesome and wonderful too.
Well, and that sort of leads to another question I had. So Percival Lowell was firmly of the belief that researchers, explorers, people who were pushing the edge of human knowledge and experience had an obligation to be able to convey that experience back to the general public. And his word for it was to be able to describe it in such a way that whoever was listening or reading or whatever would feel like they were a co-discoverer of the experience that person had had, of that knowledge that they had just uncovered. And I was wondering, how do you convey your experience of that? And how do you help try and make people be co-discoverers? So I think I'll go to Ron first for that question.
Yeah, sure. I mean, that's a great question. And I think there is an obligation to share it, but it's not only an obligation; it's also a privilege, because any beautiful experience is enriched by sharing it with others, right? And the obligation. One of the ways that I kind of look at it is, I think I was the 474th person to fly in space, the 474th person to leave the planet. So imagine if only 474 people in the history of humanity had seen a flower. Wouldn't they have an obligation to kind of describe the beauty of a flower to everybody else? And so, I think everybody who goes to space looks at it this way, that there is an obligation, there is a responsibility to share the gift that you've been given. And I left NASA in 2013 for the singular reason of being able to do just that, to be able to share full-time, unencumbered, the experience of going to space. And everything I've done since leaving NASA has been along the lines of trying to literally or figuratively raise people up to that higher perspective through public speaking, through videos and books and art and everything else that I could think of to share that really, really unique experience.
Well, thank you. Nicole, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I, like Ronnie, I think, we're kind of on this next mission in life, right? There's this, I don't know, I think it's like there's this need for it to be an expression of gratitude almost for this experience that we know, we've been blessed to have. And again, I think that's true for a lot of things that, we all experience. I mean, we want to share them, like Ron said. And it's kind of like it's almost like you go on that ski trip, maybe up the road from you guys, and you're on the Black Diamond and you made it down successfully, and somebody took some pictures of you, and then you get home and you look at it, it's like this, it looks like you're on the flat, green run. And yet, what you experienced, and you want to share it in a way that everybody else feels that same like level of adrenaline, excitement that you did, just making it down alive, right? And so I think it's true. It's, all of our colleagues in one way or another, we feel like it's in us to need to share it. And everybody does it in a different way. It's neat to see kind of this mix of things that comes together and, and all of our spaceflight explorer folks that we know, where some people really feel like when they go off to, vice president of whatever space company, or back like Neil Armstrong did to teach at a university, or like Ron doing, second book coming out. Actually, he's got 3. So there is another one out there too that you should check out. And, with the artwork, and, there's just these ways that we want to find in every form of communication to get that out. And maybe on the selfish side, we want to not lose it too. I think we want to keep it with us. It's like part of us now. And we want to, by sharing it, perhaps, we have the benefit too of being able to, not just relive it like some old astronaut that can't get over it, but do it, I think, in a meaningful way that's beneficial to the others around us.
If I could just jump on just one thing that Nicole said, because I know she would agree with me on this, is the gratitude she talked about is not only gratitude because we had the opportunity to experience it, it's gratitude for the planet that we've been given. It's you fall in love with the Earth when you fly in space. But again, you shouldn't have to go to space to fall in love with the Earth. But it's hard not to fall in love with the Earth when you do go to space. And so it's gratitude for that as well.
And it certainly is an amazing place, and we are fortunate to be here. So I have a question from somebody watching. Claire wanted to know, what was it like looking back on Earth from space for the first time? Was it what you expected? Did it impact your perspective on certain aspects of life? So I'll go to Nicole first.
Wow, Claire, I think that's the question, right? And I think it's what we're responding to in one way or another all the time. And as to, was it what I expected? I think it was that and so much more. I mean, I don't think it's like so many things where you think you have some sense, you've spoken to your colleagues who've flown before you've looked at all the pictures and video, you think what it's going to be like. And yet your expectations are here, and what it ends up feeling like is, out of the picture frame. And that's what it was like for me. I mean, I remember floating to the window. I have no recollection if we were just over the ocean, if it was land. I don't know where we were. It's probably water, because that's mostly what there is when you look out. But it was daytime. And I remember looking at Earth and just feeling like I had a better understanding, like from that second, of the word awe, of what awesomeness is. And just, I think the thing that really struck me in that immediate view was this just glowing, translucent, iridescent, crystal clear, all the colors you'd imagine Earth to be, just, presenting themselves that way against like the blackest black, crystal clear, deepest black I'd ever seen in my life. And And then I think it just grew from there into this understanding, like Ronnie said, of this love, this connection, to this place that, we should know just by being here on it, but, separating in a way that allows you to look at it differently, to experience lightning and storms moving across the planet in a way that to me was, I think, kind of the ultimate presentation of the interconnectivity of it all. As someone who grew up in Florida where, thunderstorms happen, and I thought that lightning was just over me, and when it was done, it was gone. And yet it looks like, neurons firing in a brain, traveling, maybe from Florida, but across the ocean to Africa and wrapping around the planet. And none of anything is ever in just one place at a time, and continually being a surprise out the window. Never something. I mean, I don't know if you agree, Ron, but I pray that there's never the time where people are wanting to pull the shade down on the window, because the movie's on. I don't think that's going to happen. But it grasps you in a way that's different. And I think I'll just shut up after these three things too. We talk about I'm a rambler, and we talk about this this sense of who and where we are, and this overwhelming kind of almost impossibility of being able to do this. Ron talked about us, humans on the moon, how incredible that is to think that when we put our minds to it, when we decide we can find the solution, we find one and we work together to make it happen. And but in all of that complexity of getting off the planet safely, of living and working in space even for a short period of time, and then getting home safely, it's I think there's simple discoveries in it. And, that's part of what I think we all want to share is that, it's an engineering feat, but it becomes about the humanity of it. And this understanding that, oh my gosh, we do live on a planet and we're all earthlings, and only border that matters is that thin blue line of atmosphere, and just really, really wanting people to understand that, whether they can go to space or not. Okay, that's the short answers.
Ron, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, sure. I mean,
he doesn't have anything to say about this stuff.
No. But Nicole was not rambling. Nicole was excited because she's talking about something that she loves. And yesterday was Valentine's Day, and I've come to believe that what love is the recognition of our shared life that you see in another, right? That you notice a connection in another person that somehow is the bond that's between you, another person or another. I'll just say another, because I don't want to limit it to persons. And what I experienced, I think, looking back at the Earth, and why I say it's hard not to fall in love with the Earth, is that connection. As you look back at the Earth, and you realize the shared life that it is. It's not that we came from Earth. It's we're of Earth. That we're part of Earth. It's part of us. We're part of. There's a continuum. There's not a boundary where we end and the Earth begins. It's one thing. And like Nicole, one of the first things that hit me in a very sobering way was the thinness of the atmosphere. And it was, I think, 8 years from the time we started training to the time I flew in space. And for 8 years, I listened to 8 years of crews coming back saying, "You're not going to believe how thin the atmosphere is. It's just unbelievably thin." So I had a pretty, what I thought, good expectation for how thin it was going to be. I was adequately prepared, I thought, for that. And there was no way, nothing could have prepared me for that. It was just really, really eye-opening and sobering to think that teeny tiny little line of atmosphere is all that separates us from the vacuum of space, all that keeps us alive. And that was a very, very sobering thought. But the other thing, so the planet appeared very fragile to me, or life on, not the planet, but the life on the planet seemed very fragile to me. And that was kind of scary, actually. But it's also, as Nicole said, indescribably beautiful. And the other sobering thought that hit me was that the planet is so incredibly, indescribably beautiful, but we all know that life on the planet is not always as beautiful as it appears from space, that there's all kinds of problems that we face. And there's all kinds of conflicts, and all of that stuff just seemed ridiculous from space. We look ridiculous from space. because all of those things are within our power to fix. Things like 5,000 children die every day because of waterborne diseases from drinking contaminated water. We as humans have a responsibility and obligation to prevent and the ability to prevent that from happening. All the things we quarrel over, all the conflicts, they seem to blur into insignificance when you see the planet from that perspective, and you see the beauty of the planet. And so in addition to the beauty, you have this thought that, hey, I'm floating in space right now. Going back to July 20th, 1969, nothing is impossible. It is within our capabilities. It's within our ability to solve these things and to have life on Earth for everyone approach the beauty that you see from space. And I think so. That sobering contradiction was another big takeaway, I think.
Okay, thank you. I know when you talked about what you expected and then what you found, especially when you were actually there experiencing it. In a much less emotional way, because the connection isn't the same, but there was this expectation of New Horizons going to Pluto, that we had this dull, icy rock out there that was beaten up on by other dull, icy rocks. And Will Grundy at the Observatory, and I'm sure he'll be talking about this later this week, but the only good answer he'd give in terms of being a member of the New Horizons team was, what do you expect? What do you expect to see? What do you expect to find? And he says, something we don't know. Whatever I'm going to experience, whatever we think we're going to find out, it's going to be different and it's going to be good. And when you talk about the thinness of the atmosphere or something like that, you think you know it, but until you see it, you really don't appreciate it to the same degree and same level. One question that I have for you guys is, in your talking with people, because I had this experience happen to me. I ran across somebody who you talk about the joy of wanting to share a wonderful experience and this feeling of awe and keep it alive in yourself. But I've run across people where they don't think they can experience something. They don't think they can have that feeling of awe and wonder of something new, and so it's so far out there. So from their own experience and from where their own world experience is, and some people just don't think don't deserve to have that feeling. And I was wondering if you guys have had how you deal with that, and if what you do when you experience it and experience someone who seems to feel that way. So I'll go to Ron this time.
Yeah, I think what makes flying in space so special and so obviously awe-inspiring is because it's so rare. So few people have the opportunity to experience that. But as Nicole said earlier, we're surrounded by awe and wonder constantly. And I remember there was a time I was jogging, and this was after my first mission. I was jogging through Rocky Bayou in Houston. And it's a beautiful area within the city, and there's just trees, and the birds are singing, and all you could hear the river going by and everything. It was just a really, really beautiful thing, and I found myself immersed in awe and wonder, and it felt exactly like it felt in space. Like all of a sudden, I was surrounded by nature, I was surrounded by the beauty. Everything else fell away. All the multiple conversations of other people on the bayou, everything fell away, and all that was left with was this singular vision of beauty. And like I said, we are surrounded constantly by miraculous beauty. And what was really interesting is when I was getting ready for my second mission, and I'm getting ready to go off to Russia and start the journey for 6 months into space, I started looking around and realizing all the things I wouldn't see for 6 months, like the mist on the lake in the morning, or the breeze on my face, or the sound of the birds, or all of these things. And when there's an impending situation where you're going to lose contact with those things, all of a sudden they become pretty important. And I guess what I'm getting at is we have somehow been conditioned to ignore the awe and wonder that surrounds us constantly. And I think part of that is not our fault. I think in order for us to function on a day-to-day basis and do all the things we have to do, pay the bills, go to commute, do all this kind of stuff, we have to kind of ignore the fact that we live in a galaxy that's, billions of light years across, or, that just the inconceivable grandeur of the universe is something that we can't keep into our thought process all the time, because it's overwhelming, right? And so we have to put ourselves in a limited subset of reality, a small, little, manageable, palatable piece of reality. And unfortunately, I think in the process of that, some of that awe and wonder and miraculousness leaves our awareness. But I'll say it over and over again: you don't have to go to space to realize that. You don't have to be in orbit to have an orbital perspective. You don't have to be in space to realize the uniqueness and the beauty that surrounds us all the time. Just because it's commonplace doesn't mean that it's not miraculous.
Okay, thank you, Nicole.
Ditto. But I guess I'll take it from a little different stance too, in terms of your question of somebody feeling like they don't deserve to experience something like that. And honestly, I mean, when you said that, it makes me so sad to think that somebody could feel that way. I mean, I could understand maybe not feeling like you have access to something really special around you, when in fact we all do. Or I know for myself, I experience like self-doubt, taking it from the standpoint of applying to be an astronaut, and all of the time we have people saying to us, oh my gosh, I could never do what you did, or they'd never pick me, or, oh, I'll never meet, an astronaut. I mean, these are things that, kind of we plant in our own brains. And I had done that to myself, saying, oh, why should I even think about applying to be an astronaut? Nothing I've done, would they ever pick? And it's amazing how we can, doubt ourselves, not believe we're worthy of, whatever it is, experiences that are available to us. And, I'll admit I am still, shocked that they picked me. I mean, in the grand scheme of things, what are the odds? But
well, we have, tell them that, okay?
Yeah, no, I still, I'm there's that gratitude again. But I mean, really, it's like, and I think Ron can attest to this. You come in, you interview with these other people, and I'm looking around like, okay, enjoy this experience. Don't stand a chance. These people are doing cutting edge science, maybe at the Lowell Observatory, going to, discover that next planet, whatever it is. And we kind of box ourselves in, and even to the point of not doing the stuff that we have total control of, some of the, like picking up the pen and filling out the application. Nobody else can do that for you. It doesn't cost you anything. It doesn't hurt you, but it puts you in that position to be eligible. And I think the same is true, for that person that you were talking to. Hopefully, I'm saying thankfully, they opened themselves up and got on the bus, with you, and went to this place and experienced this awe and wonder that hopefully they now understand they deserve just as much as anyone else does. And I think that's it. I think in the end, that's it. It's this willingness to open ourselves up, our hearts, our minds, just to look around and appreciate, the flower that Ron talked about before, and sit there and contemplate that for a little while and try to get your brain wrapped around how that flower is there. And that's pretty awesome and pretty wonderful.
All right. Thank you. We got a couple of practical questions that have come up here. So Riley wants to know, were there any particular smells out in space when you were spending your time up there on the station? And I'll go to Nicole.
Okay. Well, out in space, that would be a bad day. But inside the space station, it was interesting. And I, Ron, I don't know if before you flew, if you had heard of this or not. I hadn't heard of this idea of the smell of space. And, for the most part, inside the space station or the shuttle, it's pretty unscented. Everything, your shampoo, everything we use is unscented. But we as human beings provide scent, odor, to the surroundings. Our food, some of the materials have a certain odor to them, but for the most part, it's meant to be unscented. And yet, I remember this was before, before we had a spacewalk go on during my first flight. I remember we had to access this hatch of a recently docked vehicle and, open up the hatches, and you get to the cover that's on the hatch of the vehicle that you're gonna open up. And this smell, like this, not unpleasant, but just kind of sweet, metallic-y smell. I'm like, oh, I wonder what that is. And then, you just go on, and then realizing that every time something came into the station that had been exposed to space, it had this kind of smell to it, whether it was the spacesuit, from somebody coming back into the airlock, or those hatches, or even some of the stuff inside of the cargo vehicles. And I guess that's a form of off-gassing that happens, some reaction, with the atomic oxygen or whatever in this vacuum of space. But there is definitely a distinct odor to those materials that come back in.
Okay, Ron?
Yeah, I concur. I can't remember if I knew about this or not, but I remember after my first spacewalk, when the helmet was taken off me, just getting hit by this really kind of overwhelming smell of like Nicole said, burnt metal. It smelled like welding, like some type of like a welding smell or something. It actually
overheating car radiator is what. That kind of overheated car radiators.
There's a sweetness to it too. It's not a bad smell, like Nicole said, but it's a unique smell. And actually, I have some stuff that flew in space, and they're in plastic bags. And if I open those bags, I still smell. Years later, I still smell that smell in there.
All right. From Destiny, we have a question. What are your thoughts about privatized space travel? Knowing people with the least amount of training can now reach space. So, Ron?
Yeah, I think it's great. I think for all the reasons we've been talking about on this call, the more people that have the opportunity to see our planet from that perspective, the better off we're all going to be. And we're probably going to send people that, or at least eventually, the more people we send, also the better chance is that we're going to send people who can accurately share it with the rest of us. Poets and musicians and artists and folks who can capture that emotion. Can capture things that photographs and videos can't capture, and to share it with the rest of us. I think we're on the verge of a boom in commercial spaceflight. I think it's great. It also, the other thing it does is the more activities that we can turn over in low Earth orbit to commercial outfits, the more the big government space agencies can do what they're chartered to do, which is to explore, to do those things that require a very long-term return on investment, and can see what's over the next hill, if you will. And I think it's going to be a very exciting time in the next decade or so.
Nicole?
And I agree. I live here in Florida, on the west coast of Florida, and routinely, like there was a launch this morning, could watch, it might have been a satellite or cargo, but to see that happening on a more regular, like a frequent basis is really, really exciting to me. The idea that our friends are starting to fly, these missions getting back to the space station, just from across the state here, and that it's opening up, more and more. I think I think about my son who's about to graduate from high school, and for as long as he's been alive, there have been people circling the planet, every 90 minutes on that space station, and continuously, and with the hope that there's no break in that continuum, right? And that, we're going back to the moon, with some permanence in mind there, off to Mars. On Thursday on your anniversary, right, is we're getting ready for another landing on that planet.
Percy will land on Mars.
Yeah. And to think about what Ron described, this ability for more humans to get that visual, to experience that feeling, that connection that way. There's such value in it. And I'm personally counting on this commercial market, though I might have to become independently wealthy to do so, to get back up there too. We have to hold hope of that. And I look forward to the day when my son is able to board a flight to space as well.
All right. We have a little bit of an open-ended question, but it's a very good one from Mariella. What was something that you had not realized about Earth and your life and experiences here until you went into space? And how did it change your perspective? So it's about your life and experience, not just within Blue Line, although that somewhat counts in. So Nicole, you can kick off, and then Ron.
I think it's that, we've talked about it a little already. And sadly, it's stuff we all know, right? It's stuff we all know when we're in kindergarten, we learn it. And yet somehow it goes into the recesses somewhere and, isn't part of our reality on a day-to-day basis. And, this one simple fact that we live on a planet. I mean, how fast do we spin? It's like 1,000 miles an hour. We're going around the sun, 67 something thousand miles an hour, and yet we just feel like we're in this place, right? Just still here in this place. And I think if we let ourselves reflect on this reality of who and where we are, and, through images like Earthrise, and, I think about the mission out to Pluto. I mean, on all of these flights, what are we looking for? That relationship, like back to ourselves, those images that have the little dot of light that's us. And that's just the fact that we live on a planet. And I think that's, even though I knew it, I feel like I realized that about Earth. I learned it, and it's had an impact on my life since then. And I think will until I'm not here anymore.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree with everything Nicole said, and I maybe to put that into a sentence, what going to space I think did was make these ideas real, to make them undeniable, and so like I said, one of the surprises I had was how thin the atmosphere was, but I knew the atmosphere was thin, but it made it real. The other thing I think, and probably a more important, bigger, deeper thing, is when I was in space, I looked back at the planet, especially out on a spacewalk. I felt deeply, deeply interconnected and interdependent with everybody on the planet. And so I had that feeling before. I mean, I knew that I was part of something called humanity, which is one of the many species on this planet. But in some way that I don't think I'll ever be able to fully explain, being physically detached from the Earth made me feel deeply interconnected with everyone on it. There was no longer, me and them, or us and them. There was just us. There was just we. And one of the things that I think changed in me because of that is, if I hear of some natural disaster in some part of the world, I don't think, oh, those poor people over there. I think, oh, that's happening to us. There is no divide. There is no boundary there. As Nicole likes to say, the only border that matters is the border of that thin blue line surrounding our planet. So that becomes undeniable and clear on the planet. And again, you don't have to go to space. I think a lot of the things that happen to us because of that reason, to give us an opportunity to realize that we're all in this together, that we're all literally in the same boat, riding through the universe together. And I think COVID-19 is a good example of that. Literally every single person on the planet in one way or another is affected by that pandemic. And it makes that saying, we're all in this together, not a cliche. It makes it undeniably true, obviously undeniably true. And I think that's what going to space does. It makes things that we know at some level undeniably true. It becomes fact.
By the way, Nicole, when you were talking about how fast we're actually moving and stuff like that, you've got to figure out that there's also the velocity we have as our galaxy, galaxy is spinning around. And then there's the amount of speed with which the Milky Way is moving through the universe. So, it just gets faster and faster and faster.
Yeah, it's crazy time.
Anyway, so question, what was your favorite meal or dish on the menu while at the space station? So, Ron, do you want to take that one first?
Well, the thing that popped into my head was my least favorite dish, but
To everybody's, I think.
Probably, I think it doesn't sound that fancy, but just spaghetti. I think I like spaghetti. But I will tell a quick story. When shortly after I got on the space station, I was getting ready to open up a package of beef teriyaki. And my crewmate from the Italian Space Agency, Paolo Nespoli,
That guy.
said, "You don't open that." I said, "Why not?" He goes, "Because you're not going to eat it." And I said, "Oh, I love beef teriyaki." He said, "No, you don't." And he said, "We can't have you not eat that meal and then have that smell, like going back to the smell." And I said, "Paulo, I love beef teriyaki. It's not going to be a problem because you're not going to eat it." And I opened it up and I started eating it, and he was absolutely right. It was the most horrible thing I ever tasted. And I as much as he told me I had to eat the whole thing, I couldn't do it without it coming out. Coming out the way it went in. So I can't, the food is not bad. It's like camping food. And I don't, nothing stands out as better than it for me. Maybe Nicole, you have something, but nothing stood out as better than anything else. But the one thing that stood out as worse than everything else was beef teriyaki.
Go figure.
And cheese grits. Cheese grits were pretty bad too. Yeah, like Ron said, the food I thought was really pretty good. And, as the eye and International Space Station, there was a mix of food from all the different countries too, which I thought was really great. I can say what my favorite was. It was the Japanese curries. They were really good. Loved those. And, but the mix was nice. It was kind of interesting how, food was different. But just like here on Earth, I think food is one of those things you kind of all gathered around. We all shared our food with each other. On our crew, I don't know, Ronnie, if it's true for you, but on station, we made a point of, as much as possible, having all of our meals together. We would do breakfast and lunch down in the Russian service module, and then dinner would be the gathering in the node, and we'd all bring stuff. And one of our crewmates, Frank Davina, he really thought out what he was going to have in his bonus food, because there was certain foods that you could have, your family could send things to you. You could have like this little bonus pack of food, and was delicious. I mean, it was just delicious. And the Europeans had this mushroom pate. And again, like Ron said, if you open something, we had an agreement, because wet trash is really bad on the space station to have to store it and stuff. And food is kind of icky that way. That talk about smells in space. That's where you'll get some if you don't tend it properly. But this mushroom pate, we would open it and with the agreement that we would all, participate in eating it. And you could never have eaten it all by yourself because it was kind of a rich thing. It was just all these mushrooms blended up with hazelnuts and vanilla, and just so good. And I don't know, I just have memories of the food not being something you would probably choose down here if you had the choice. But being so much better than I expected it to be, and a nice variety while in space too.
Hey, I just remembered my favorite.
Go ahead.
Candy coated chocolate.
Yes.
So what do you think that is? What do you think candy coated chocolate is? Is there another name for that?
Lowell, what do you think?
I have no idea. I would think chocolate covered candy. I'm trying to think of it in reverse. So it's
candy coated chocolate. That's what we were required to call M&Ms.
To the point of where, M&Ms is not written on the pack. I thought they might have scraped off all the M&Ms off the little printing on the M&M just to make a point, but they didn't. That was still
not allowed to say commercial products when you're in the space station. While you're working at NASA. We're not working at NASA, so we could say M&Ms now. We don't have to say candy coated chocolate.
So one thing I do note is the idea of sharing the meal and the sense of community that you have. And I find that a very common human experience in terms of, we talked about shared experiences and everything else like that, but sitting down and breaking bread with somebody is in some ways the ultimate form of both peacefulness and exchange and common experience that we can talk about.
Yeah, I'm sure Nicole. I'm sure Nicole, you probably talk about that in your new book. I know I talk about that, breaking bread, and you're seeing, there's people from 3 or 4 different nations, orbiting the planet at 17,500 miles an hour. It's really something.
I mean, it's like everything. I think there at the observatory, where in our own homes. I mean, it ultimately ends up being about the people, right? And we've done a really good job with the people working together peacefully, successfully on the ISS, and just the best example for what we should be doing down here, right, Ron?
I want to thank you guys both for this evening. We do have to bring things to an end, but I want to thank you very, very much, and thank you for this shared experience that we've been able to have virtually, and maybe someday you both can come up to the Mars Hill and we can have another wonderful shared experience in person. And with that, I'm going to go back to Kevin.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Nicole, Ron, and Lowell. It's been a great program and a lot of perspective on a lot of different aspects of going into space. So thanks for all you do for inspiring us all around the globe. And all we can say is keep doing that great work you're doing, because we really need that inspiration. So with that, we'll close this session. Thanks, everybody, for joining us, and we'll see you next time.